everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ashley, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through all the horror books on my TBR. I recently just did this for all of the romance books on my TBR, and I thought it'd be fun to kind of go through a couple of different genres, probably romance, horror, and thriller. So today is going to be the horror installment, and then if you still like these videos, I will definitely do one for all the thriller books on my TBR in the future as well. I haven't been reading as much horror lately, so I do have quite a bit sitting on my shelves right now. So I also thought it would just be fun to go back through them so I can get inspired again to start putting more on my TBRs each month. But without further ado, let's go on over to the shelves and check out all the horror books on my TBR. My horror books are a little bit all over the place on my shelves. Most of them are kind of right here, but they're not all super organized. So we're just gonna be bouncing around and going in no particular order. I guess first we'll start with a lot of the tiny novellas that I have. So I love to keep horror novellas sitting around. It's my favorite form of horror, and I love to just be able to fly through a little novella. So I have a lot at all times on my TBR. I like to keep a stockpile for readathons or when I just need something quick. And usually I don't even really know what they're about because since they're so short, I don't feel the need to look into them a ton. I just get the general taste for what it's gonna be, and I don't want to know too much about it. So these I'll go through super quick. We have Ghost Wall by Sarah Moss. This one is set in the north of England. It follows this girl Sylvie and her parents who are living as ancient Britons, surviving by the tools and knowledge of the Iron Age, and I've heard really good things about this one. Then we have a classic with The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. I'm trying to make my way through some of the bigger classic horror novels. You'll see another one come up in a little bit, but this is a story that I feel like I probably have read before, but I don't really remember it, and so I wanted to read it again in my adult life. Prosper's Demon by KJ Parker. I know absolutely nothing about this other than that it was published by Tor, and I really like Tor's stuff usually, and the cover of this one for sure pulled me in. It has something to do with an exorcist, possession, and it's a pitch dark, witty fantasy, so I'm definitely intrigued by this one. Crossroads by Laurel Hightower. This one follows a woman whose son dies in a tragic car crash, and so this one also focuses on grief and him potentially coming back as a ghost in some way. I've heard really incredible things about this one recently. I feel like I heard one good thing about it, which made me pick it up, and then I've owned it for a year and a half, 2 years maybe, and never really heard anything more, but then recently I've been seeing good reviews for it again. So excited to check out this one. And another classic, Carmilla by Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu. This edition in particular is edited by Carmen Maria Machado, who I absolutely adore, so I'm excited that I have this edition. Also absolutely love this cover as well. But this is the story that inspired Dracula, so really excited to give this one a shot, especially because I love Dracula so much. Now I have a couple more in this stack. So I have Eileen by Ottessa Moshfegh. I'm pretty sure this is a horror book, technically. I don't know, Ottessa Moshfegh's writing is weird, so it kind of lives in this strange liminal space of genres in my brain. But this one is set around the Christmas season. You're following Eileen Dunlap, who is a young woman trapped between her role as her alcoholic father's caretaker in a home whose squalor is the talk of the neighborhood and her day job as a secretary at the boys' prison, filled with its quotidian horrors. That was a very long sentence, sorry for that. There ends up being a new counselor who comes to the prison that she is enchanted with, and in a Hitchcockian twist, her affection for Rebecca ultimately pulls her into complicity in a crime that surpasses her wildest imaginings. The only thing I've ever read from Ottessa Moshfegh is Death in Her Hands, which I didn't end up loving, but I was just really enthralled by the writing and the story in general and not knowing where it's gonna go. It kind of reminds me of Mona Awad's style, so I definitely wanted to try more from Ottessa Moshfegh. This one I got very cheap at a used bookstore, so I'm excited to try this one out next and see if I can like her style more in maybe a different story. Next we have The Saturday Night Ghost Club by Craig Davidson, who is also the author of The Troop, Nick Cutter, I think. Is that right? Did I make that up? This is another one that was definitely a cover buy. I love the 80s vibes of this cover and just how unique and quirky it looks. It's also one I've heard really good reviews of. It follows a group of kids in the 1980s in Niagara Falls. They have this Saturday Night Ghost Club where they all do ghost things together, I guess. And it follows them over the summer as they begin to uncover mysteries darker than any of the things they had imagined before. Apparently this is also supposed to be a heartwarming, coming of age story. story, which I think is very interesting, especially to explore in horror. So I'm excited to give this one a try. I'm gonna be excited to give all of these a try. I'm gonna say that a million times, but what else do you say when you haven't read a book, you know? Let's see, couple more down here. This one, I don't know if it's horror or thriller, but it's True Crime Story by Joseph Knox. This is told through interviews for pretty much the entirety of the book. And it's also a meta fiction story, I think, because the author is Joseph Knox, but there's a writer in the story named Joseph Knox. And so it seems like you're reading true crime, but it's fictional. I don't know how I'm gonna feel about it. I ended up getting this book from my mom. She had gotten this in a book subscription box and I just took it off her hands. So if I hate it, it's not really a huge loss to me, but I was interested enough in it. I think it's one that I would want to pair the audiobook with though, since it's told so much through interviews. I feel like that would be the best way to read this one. Next we have another novella. This one is Fly Away by Kathleen Jennings. Again, another one that has a really gorgeous cover to it that really intrigued me. And this one is like a fairy tale. It's gothic. It's compared to Shirley Jackson. It's called a dark fairy tale, half mystery, half fairy tale, all exquisitely rendered and full of teeth is what Holly Black had to say about it. And the synopsis says, in a small western Queensland town, a reserved young woman receives a note from one of her vanished brothers, a note that makes her question her memories of their disappearance and her father's departure. A beguiling story that proves that gothic delights and uncanny family horror can live and even thrive under a burning sun. Fly Away introduces readers to Bettina Scott, whose search for the truth throws her into tales of eerie dogs, vanished schools, cursed monsters, and enchanted bottles. I don't know, it just sounds really interesting. It sounds like a really unique type of story. This one also came from Tor, which is a trusted source for me when it comes to novellas, so excited to check this one out. Next we have The Harpy by Megan Hunter. This is actually an ARC copy that I ended up finding at a used bookstore near me, but it's about this woman and her husband ends up cheating on her, and she says in order for him to make it up to her, she gets to have 3 chances to hurt him, but she gets to decide when and how, and so they decide to do that. I think someone ends up turning into a bird in the story too, from what I've heard about it. I don't really know. It sounds like a weird one. It's one of the lowest rated books on my TBR, which actually intrigues me more. So it's probably gonna be a love it or hate it type situation, but I'm intrigued enough by it to give it a shot. And then finally we have Kill Creek by Scott Thomas. I could not find the author name in this cover. That was very hidden for a second. But this is a story about these horror writers who end up going to this haunted house for some opportunity that they get to do that, and then I think things get bloody. So sounds intriguing to me. I've heard very differing opinions on this book, so I want to be able to just go in and form my own opinion on it and see how I feel about it. But yeah, it has a very intriguing premise, so I hope I end up enjoying this one. And then we have a couple more on this shelf. So we have The Winter People by Jennifer McMahon. I've had this one on my TBR for a long time. I just haven't felt interested enough in it yet to pick it up because it does have a historical element. It's told in 2 timelines. One is in the present day and one is in 1908, which is like super old. And I don't know, something about that intimidates me and I haven't picked it up yet. But I've heard this one compared to Pet Sematary, so I imagine it's gonna tackle grief in some way. Sounds like it's gonna probably be something I'll like, but I'm just so hesitant because of the historical element. I also have, I don't know where it is. Where did that book go? The Drowning Kind by Jennifer McMahon as well. So I'm gonna have to try her stuff eventually. I have 2 of her books on my TBR and I've read neither of them. And one of my most anticipated books of the year is a Jennifer McMahon book. That looks really interesting. So one of these days, hopefully. I also have Sorrowland by Rivers Solomon. This is a very interesting speculative horror fantasy blend about this woman named Vern who was 7 months pregnant with twins. She ended up fleeing to the woods, gave birth to the twins, and planned to raise them far away from the influence of the outside world. But she was a hunted woman. People were after her, and forced to fight back against the community that refuses to let her go, she unleashes incredible brutality far beyond what a person should be capable of. Her body racked by inexplicable and uncanny changes. I started this one before. I only got 20 pages into it. I was very confused. I'm probably gonna need an audiobook to get through this one, but it was very intriguing. And again, also love this cover. And then 2 more that that are up here, I don't know if they're horror. I'm pretty sure they're horror, are Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder and A Touch of Jen by Beth Morgan. I know both of these are just like weird books, so that's why I'm like, I don't know if you would call them like horror or if they go into some other speculative, strange genre. But both of these have been blurbed by Carmen Maria Machado, which is why I picked them up. This one is about a woman who thinks she's turning into a dog, and this one has something to do with like social media and obsession. I've honestly heard pretty terrible reviews for both of them, which is why I haven't gotten around to reading them yet, but I still do want to read them and form my own opinions. I've just been a little bit hesitant. Let's see, next up we have Jane Eyre, a classic gothic story that I haven't gotten around to yet, but it's on my 22 books to get to in 2022, so definitely planning on giving this one a go sometime this year. Another classic I have is Frankenstein. I can't believe I haven't read Frankenstein yet. It's gonna happen this year. If it doesn't, you're all allowed to yell at me. I've been saying it for years that I'm gonna read it, but this is the year. I read so many stories that are inspired by Frankenstein or have Frankenstein elements that it's honestly embarrassing that I haven't read this at this point. So it's gonna happen this year. Next up, I have The Lost Village by Camilla Sten. This is a story about this town and these filmmakers that go out there, a documentary filmmaker who is obsessed with the vanishing residents of an old mining town that's dubbed the Lost Village. In 1959, her grandmother's entire family disappeared in the mysterious tragedy, and ever since, the unanswered questions surrounding the only two people who were left, a woman stoned to death in the town center and an abandoned newborn, have plagued her. So she goes out there with a crew to see what's going on in the town, and then spooky things happen from there. I think this one sounds super interesting. Camilla Sten also has another book coming out this year, so I want to read this one relatively soon so I can decide if I want to get excited for her next book. But I've heard kind of bad reviews for this one, so I'm a little nervous about it. But I still want to be able to make my own opinion on it. I'm still going to check it out, hopefully relatively soon, and I hope that I love it. I don't know if this one would classify as horror, but I have Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danforth. I've seen this called horror in some places. I don't really know what else I'd call it. I think it's kind of gothic. So yeah, I feel like it's a horror story. But this one is really long, and so that's why I haven't read it yet. It's a gorgeous copy though. I loved the book. There's like illustrations in here, and it's just a really well put together book. But this is this author's adult debut that is highly imaginative and an original horror comedy centered around a cursed New England boarding school for girls, a wickedly whimsical celebration of the art of storytelling, sapphic love, and the rebellious female spirit. Well, that sounds like 5-star material to me, so I don't know why I've let this sit on my shelves for so long. It's just so long that I've been intimidated by it, but I love dark comedy. I didn't know this was gonna be a dark comedy, so this is feeling like it might be on my March TBR. And then the last two books I have are two books that have gotten really bad reviews. And it seems like the horror books I'm interested in that I pick up get terrible reviews, and then I just let them sit on my shelves and don't pick them up. So am I picking horrible books to be interested in? Or am I gonna love these books and I've been letting the reviews hold me back? I don't know. But the ones I have are Survivor Song by Paul Tremblay and Wonderland by Zoe Stage. Or Zoji Stage, I'm not sure how to say this author's name, but I was really intrigued by both of these. The Paul Tremblay book, because I read Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay, absolutely loved that, so wanted to read more from him. This is a like pandemic zombie type story, I think. And then Wonderland is like a creepy woods type story. This is another one that has a really cool creepy cover where it's like a woman's face, but it's also like woods, which was super intriguing to me. But yeah, I've seen really bad reviews for both of these. They're definitely some of the lowest rated books on my TBR, but I just haven't been able to unhaul them because I'm just still so curious about them and so intrigued by the idea of the story behind them, but then I never end up prioritizing them over all the other books on my TBR because I'm scared that they're gonna be bad. It's a vicious cycle that I'm trapped in. So that is it for all of the horror books on my TBR at the moment. Always going to be a growing TBR and hopefully a shrinking TBR at the same time as I'm reading the books. But let me know in the comments below if you think I'm going to absolutely love any of these. Are any of these your favorite books? Which ones should I definitely prioritize? Especially if there are any of the ones that I mentioned have bad reviews and that's why I haven't picked them up. If you love any of them, please convince me to pick them up so I will finally prioritize them. If you've made it to the end of the video and you want to leave an emoji in the comments to show that you've reached the end of the video, or just because you don't know what else to comment, let's do the ghost emoji for today since we're talking about horror books. But that is it from me. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!